bringing you the best strategies to navigate your financial life. It's time to follow your compass. Listen to our industry-leading guests and grab some tips on how to navigate your financial world and beyond. Live from Gateway Financial Partners Studios, we bring you Navigating Your Wealth Journey with your host, Mike Torello.
Welcome to another episode of Navigating Your Wealth Journey. I'm your host, Mike Torello, and today we have a fun episode for you. We have assistant golf professional Jake Ferrara from Wheeler Family Traditions in Wallingford, Connecticut on to take us through some tips, some tricks, and really how to improve your golf game, not just from a skill standpoint, but from a mental standpoint as well. So Jake, thanks a lot for coming on today.
No, thanks for having me. This is awesome.
So why don't we dive right in, talk a little bit about your background. I know you had a kind of an interesting path to get into professional golf, and it wasn't something that you did from the time you were 5 years old. So why don't you talk a little bit about your background and your journey and how you got started with professional golf?
Right. Yeah. So I noticed a lot of people that I play with, they've been playing from a young age. I'm the exact opposite. I'm a baseball player from the start. Never really looked at golf as something that I was ever going to get into. Happy I did, but yeah, I played baseball up until, I played in college, high school, and it wasn't until COVID when, it was the only really thing to do was play golf. So a couple buddies and I went and played, realized that I do like it a lot and got pretty good at it pretty fast. I don't know how, but I just rolled with it. And, I've been 5, maybe 6 years now in the game, and really haven't looked back. It's definitely going to be my career for a long time.
That's awesome. And I know you put all the time in basically in a short time frame to get, to pass your playing test and to do all your schooling and stuff like that. So that way you could actually start to teach people and really pass the knowledge that not only you're learning in your own personal game, but to really teach people to help them get better at themselves.
Right. Yeah, it was a squeeze. And it was just a lot of, and I'm sure we'll get into it, what I did exactly. But I did a lot of practicing in a short period of time, which obviously has helped me. And yeah, I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit. But
yeah, well, let's go right there. Let's start talking with practice because, I golf myself. I enjoy the game. My kids are starting to get into golf, and the thing I hear a lot from my kids, from my friends at the golf course, it's like, well, what do I do when I practice?
Right.
How do I warm up the right way? How do I practice the right way? And, you could read a million things out there. So let's go through, all right, if you're going to go practice, you're going to try to get better. Mm-hmm. What should that day look like? What are some of the things you should really focus in on in order to get better, to improve your game?
Yeah. First and foremost, if you're a high handicapper, a lot of the strokes are coming from short game. From what I've seen, from giving lessons, anybody can go to the driving range, drop a bucket of balls down, and just look out into the distance. Nothing not aimed at anything, no alignment, and just hit golf balls. It will help. Swinging is great, repetition is great, but the first thing I would focus on, and what I focused on was short game. Whether it's, chipping to a target. I started in my back. I was fortunate enough to have a pretty good sized backyard when I realized I was, starting to like golf, and I would just take a wedge into my backyard and I put a stick in the ground and I just would chip to it. And it's helped me drastically. And then, once I actually got a job at a golf course, at Traditions in Wallingford, their Wheeler Family Traditions, we have a great practice facility. I'm chipping, putting, and I noticed that I'm doing that more than actually spending time on the range. And then when I did get to the range, I would look at targets and I would hit to targets. And from there, I noticed that on the course, hitting a green in regulation and kind of aiming at a flag was easier, but also if I missed that green, all the chipping and putting that I put into, all that practice I put in, it was coming around and I was saving strokes on the golf course. So yeah, the focal point for any golfer getting into the game, find a course find an area where you could chip. And then if you have the ability to putt, obviously work on that too. But just short game was huge.
And I think it's so important that you mention that, because most holes, right, 50% of your strokes are designed to be from really close.
Right.
Right? Like if you hit a green in regulation, you're supposed to make 2 putts.
Correct.
If you miss, you're supposed to make 1 chip and 1 putt. That's how the course is designed.
Right.
But like you said, a lot of high handicappers, you see a lot of people, they're taking those full swings and they're trying to do it. So, all right, so we're going to start chipping. We're going to work on our short game. What are some things, how should they work on that? What are some specific things, if you get to a chipping area that you can work on to get yourself better?
Yeah, I think the first thing is looking at what type of, if you throw a bunch of balls down, in the rough, or some practice areas have an approach, that you can hit into or hit off of. And the first thing is what flag am I on this putting green am I going to hit to? There's a flag out in the distance, 30 yards with a lot of green to work with, or something short. What type of shot do I want to hit with a wedge? To get, specific but not really crazy is, if I have a lot of green to work with, I'm going to play a wedge that's a little bit more less lofted off the back foot. It's called a bump and run. Let it roll out, pick a spot and let it roll out. Flag is closer to me. Little bit of a higher shot, don't have a lot of green to work with, let it land soft and stay right there. And just messing with those shots. Messing with those shots is huge. I mean, you're going to, I could practice. I could go out right now and practice, and I'm going to hit a couple bad wedge shots during practice, but get them out, work on those shots and play every shot during practice, and you'll be comfortable on the course, And
I think it's so important you said play every shot. I remember years ago seeing an interview with Jordan Spieth, and he said one of the most important things during practice is to play like you're a little kid.
Right.
Try every shot, because then when you get into your round, right, if you're a competitive person, you get into your round, that's your game time. You need to know what you have, and the only way to know that you have it is to really practice it and to know that it's there.
Right. Yeah. Don't be afraid to throw a ball behind a tree, and punch a wedge out and see where it ends up. I mean, these are real life scenarios that happen on a golf course, and it sucks to be out there and then you don't feel comfortable, and that's where blow up holes happen. It's like you're just in spots that you're not used to, and it shows.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So after, we've tried a bunch of different wedge shots, we've tried chipping and stuff like that. How should somebody putt?
Yeah. Putting is, I mean, you could put one of my best friends next to me right here, and he'll tell you, Jake's not a good putter, putting is difficult for a lot of people. The hardest part for me was something called a lag putt, and that's a putt that has some distance to it, and there's a lot that goes into it, speed, and then also the break of the green. You gotta pair all that up to kind of formulate a perfect putt, but what I actually started doing, and this actually helped me pass the player ability test, I started putting to a tee only when I practice. And this just dials in my eyesight on one specific target. And, technically speaking, if you hit the tee, it's center of the cup.
Right.
After a long time so I would actually putt like that for a half hour. 6-10 feet, go back, and they're not all going to hit the tee, but you gotta imagine that if you get somewhere around that, you're either going to make the putt or it's going to be a tap in.
Right.
And then from there, I focus on an actual golf hole, and you'd be surprised how big the golf hole actually, like the cup looks after putting to a tee for a half hour. And I did that. I showed up when I took my PAT. I showed up very early and just practiced on the putting green like I would before any golf round or just by myself practicing. And it gave me a lot of confidence that day putting. And there was a couple big putts that I needed to make, in order to pass, because I passed it right on the number. There was no room for error. And actually the last putt I had was like a 40-foot breaker at Stanley Golf Course on the 18th. And, I don't know if putting to a tee helped me with a 40-footer, but I'd like to say it did, just to give it.
Well, it's
some credit.
it's that confidence too. Like you're aiming to this very small target in your practice, and you're making it extremely hard for yourself. So when you get out there, it's easier,
Right?
Like you said, like that cup looks huge,
Right.
as opposed to if you're always putting to the big hole, to the regular hole from close up. Next thing you know, you have this long, big breaking putt,
And yeah, I'm familiar with your background too, Mike. I mean, I know you played college baseball and in high, a lot of baseball at a lot of different levels, but it's the same with any sport.
Right.
Like if you practice hard,
Yeah.
you are gonna get better. The game itself, whether it's a game day for football, baseball, or you have a match for golf, it's going to help you.
Absolutely. So last thing on practice, and then we'll kind of go into the mental side of the game. You said focus in on the short game, right? Half your strokes are going to be on the short game. Well, we still got to work on the long game, those full swings.
Right.
What's just something quick, somebody, if they had, say 20 minutes or a half hour to take full swings or a small bucket,
Right.
what should they ideally do to try and improve their game?
Yeah, so you get to a driving range and you got a few, hopefully the driving range that you're at has a couple targets that you could hit. Most of them do, but a flag, if you can get a distance on some of these flags just to have in the back of your head so you know what clubs, you feel comfortable with hitting to those targets, I think that's helpful. But yeah, I mean, I would start low wedges, whatever type of wedge you kind of carry, just get a couple, shots off. I recommend hitting off grass because it does kind of help you on the course, but I know that's hard to come by in Connecticut. Some courses don't necessarily have, that grass area to hit off of. But yeah, just start with those low wedges, get shots off towards a flag at a specific distance, and then work your way up to my favorite club in the bag. And when I give lessons, it's the starting club, no matter what. It's a 7-iron. Find something that you could hit a 7-iron to and focus in on it. I also recommend don't ever go to a driving range and hit without an alignment stick. You could also use a club, but just kind of aim yourself, because you can get lost on a driving range. It's very open.
Oh yeah,
it's different than a hitting on a fairway or hitting into a par 3. So make sure you're lined up. Grab the club that you feel like you can get to whatever flag you are aimed at, and just really focus on that. And then also something that, and one of the greatest golfers of all time, I saw a quick little clip and I saw him out doing it on the range one time, and I don't know how often he did this, but Tiger Woods would actually simulate a golf hole with his range session. Whether it's I got a par 4, 450, whatever it may be. Driver, if I hit a good one, I know kind of what club is next, and just play a golf hole on the driving range and just have fun.
Right.
Don't waste your time. The biggest thing is a lot of people come in, can I get a large bucket at the golf course? I'm like, yeah, here you go. And I kind of just free time, I kind of look down and they're boom, boom, firing away. I'm like, I wish they would just relax, take those 70 golf balls and turn it in. If you have the time, turn it into something,
Well, and that's the thing, like you said, aim to a target, simulate what you're going to do on the course. But the biggest thing with that is controlling all the variables.
Right.
I think what you just said about having an alignment stick is so important, because depending on what range you're at, depending on how wide it is, how deep it is, you may think you're standing facing the right way, but if the mats are facing one way and the hole's off to the side, you don't realize, you're aiming to the wrong target.
Right.
And the stick tells you, okay, this is where we're going to aim.
You could be standing sideways on the mat,
right?
And it looks funny.
Yeah.
But guess what? You're lined up. Your shoulders, your lower half is lined up exactly where it's supposed to be. On a target, or even more important, on a golf course. You kind of feel that comfort there. So yeah, that's a great point with the range there, having some mats that are offline.
Awesome. So let's go into a little bit of kind of the mental side of going through a round of golf, let's say a competitive round of golf, right? Golf is a very mentally challenging game. I know for you and I, we both played baseball in college. I tell people all the time I played a very hard mental sport and went to a harder one because golf challenges you every second you're on that course. Before we dive into some tips, Why don't you talk a little bit about what that player ability test is that you passed? Because I think that'll give people a lot of framework for why kind of that mental game is so important, even for someone with your ability, because that's one day, and kind of just talk about what the background is and what passing that did for you.
Right. So it's playing 18 holes in one day for anybody is tiring. I mean, you play, you're out there for probably, if you're lucky, 4 hours, sometimes a little longer if you're even, lucky or shorter than that. But the player ability test is 2 18-hole rounds one day. You get, I was sitting there on a break for maybe 15 minutes between rounds. So, you don't want to get cold. If you're swinging it good, you want to get back out there. If you're not, then you're probably just like, let's wait as long as we can. But it took me 3 tries to pass this player ability test. And yeah, it's 36 holes one day. And based off of the course and the handicap, there's certain, the par of the course. I think, so I was at Stanley Golf Course in New Britain. I got, it was like 15 strokes over par for the 2 rounds. So I shot, I shot it. I had to shoot 157 or better. And I shot, like I told you guys earlier, I shot it on the number. So there was no room for error. And it tests you. I mean, to put it, the first one that I took coming from baseball, it's a team sport, and then I take this, the first PAT in my head pro at Traditions, Dave Giacandino, he said, listen, take it. Don't expect to pass it, but play your game. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay. And I went out there and I played my game, stood over that first tee shot, and I completely forgot how to play golf. My hands were. I was like, this is the real deal. You're not with your buddies on a random weekday or weekend. So I basically threw up a dud in the first round, and then I kind of pieced it together in the second one. I realized what I needed to do, and then I took the second one at Oak Lane in Woodbridge, which is a tough course, And I said to myself, if I don't pass it here, at least I'm taking it at a tough course. So I'm just bettering myself, like for the long term here. And then so that was all in one. So that was first year I only took 1. So it was like 2022, and then 2023 I took 2 of them. So the first one was Oak Lane. I didn't pass that. I missed it by a few strokes. And then I went back to Stanley. And the nerves were gone. I stood on the first tee on a par 5 with a driving iron, 2-iron, looking down at it. And I said, I could hit this, and boom, blasted down the middle. And then from there, it was on. But then I started getting into some trouble on certain holes. And I was like plus 10. I tell people this story all the time. I was like plus 10 through 8 holes. And I'm like, okay, let's try it the 4th time, like I'm not gonna get it. I'm not gonna get it now. And something crazy happened. I hit a nice drive on a par 5, and I almost made an albatross on this par 5. I hit it to like 2 inches with a 5-iron. I went driver, and I had 200 yards in. I had a nice 5-iron, and everybody that was around the clubhouse had their hands up around the green. I looked at the kid that I was playing with, and by the way, in this PAT, you're playing with 2 other randoms. You're playing in a group of 3, and everybody's keeping everybody else's score just to make it fair. But I was lucky enough in this 3rd time to have a good group of guys, and I hit it to like an inch, 2 inches, tapped it in for eagle, and I was like, well, there's 2 strokes. They got back, and then I got to a short par 4 on 10. After making the turn, I birdied that, and then I like salvaged an 80, and I was like, okay, I know I could shoot 77. I know I could do this. And I just did the same thing I did in the second round in the first round, in the second round without the errors. Shot 77 on the number, and I said earlier I had a 40-foot like the kids that I were playing with at this point where they were kind of out of it, they weren't going to pass this day or this specific day, and they were rooting for it. Was nice to have them like rooting for me. They're like standing on the side of the green like, come on. And I put it to like an inch, 2 inches, and I, believe it or not, I marked the putt. I was so nervous to hit this putt in. I was like, there's no way I missed like a 3-incher. I'm like, there's no way, right? So I mark it and I tap it in, and it just, the relief I had was was huge.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it was a grind. I went home and I was like 6:30 by the time I got home. I fell asleep. I was so tired. I was just mentally drained. It took a lot out of me.
So let's talk about you mentioned a couple things throughout that story to kind of tell us some tips we could work on. So, you're standing on the first tee, first time, extremely nervous. Third time, back at the same spot, completely calm.
Yeah.
What did you focus on to know in yourself, like, hey, this is all I have to do. This is ready to go.
I think it was also it was comfortable. I had a more of a comfort feeling, because I wasn't also used to first time I wasn't used to playing with like randoms. And then now I just introduced myself in the third round to these kids. They seemed cool, and I was like, all right, they're trying to do the same thing I'm doing, but at the same time, I'm like, I want to beat them. Like, it's not there's no like, purse at the end of the tournament, or it's not a tournament. But I want to beat them. I want to show these kids that like I'm an employee at a golf course trying to become an assistant pro, and I'm good enough to do it. So that kind of comes from baseball.
Right.
I was like,
well, that's
this
interesting.
pitcher, this pitcher here throws however hard, and I'm just like, I don't care. I want to show my teammates that I'm the guy in this spot I'm the right guy in the spot. And from there it was on. So then that's where the nerves kind of went away. And then I just, over time I played those, I played 2 rounds prior for a PAT. That's a lot of golf. I just got comfortable in those spots with a wedge in my hand from certain distance. A lot of people think I'm going to chunk this or I'm going to blade. I wasn't thinking that. I was like, I could hit this to a foot. Every shot I had in that second round, especially the second round of that day on that third one, where I shot that 77. I mean, a 77 is nothing crazy. I mean, I've definitely had better rounds, but I'm like, I could hit this shot. Every shot I had, I kind of told I was just talking to myself, and I was extremely confident. And I think, kind of just throwing myself in the fire with that first PAT, and then the second one at a hard course. I'm like, okay, I know Stanley Golf Course now. I just played one earlier in the year at Oak Lane, tough course. And I know Stanley's easier than Oak Lane. This is easy.
Well, I think that's so important too, because as an athlete, as someone like you got that competitive juice back, right?
Right.
But like you said, you had to just go out and do it.
Yeah. And it was gone for a while.
Yeah.
Competitive juice, because, college, I got, kind of got screwed there towards the end with COVID, so it's been a while, leading up to that PAT since I've like kind of was like head down. I talked to the kids that I was playing with. I wasn't rude, but I was really focused, and it was like, at a certain point, I kind of like smiled. I said, it feels good to feel like this again, because I played D3 baseball at a small school in Massachusetts, in a competitive conference with a lot of good baseball players,
right?
And I would kind of feel that same fire, like, okay, we might be the underdog here, but like, guess what? And then we would come out on top, and I had that feeling come back. It was awesome.
Yeah, and for your average everyday person that's playing on the weekend, right? How do they get that competitive feeling? How do they get that focus? Just go out and do it.
Yeah.
Right. Just go out and play.
Yeah.
Right. It's gonna settle down. It's gonna be an easy thing to do. You just gotta get out and do it and get that experience.
The weekend golf, I was grateful enough this year as an assistant pro. It's a tough life, with work and everything, like the hours you work. But I was great. I was grateful to have a Sunday off, a weekend off, which is awesome.
That's awesome.
And we would get these, Sunday matches going, me and my buddies. And, I don't know if they'll probably end up seeing this at some point and they're going to love it. But we get these matches going on Sunday, and the group chat is going, and I'm like, for a Sunday match, and I won't even play at my course. I stay away from my course on my day off just to kind of, avoid any problems with stuff that's going on there. But we go down to the local muni in East Haven, and we battle it out. And that same fire that I had in that PAT comes out sometimes on the golf course in a there's not even money involved. It's just straight bragging rights. Yeah. And it's awesome.
That's great.
Yeah.
So one other thing I want to talk on mentally, you mentioned kind of through your PAT story, you were kind of down, right? You said you were 10 over through 8.
Oh, yeah.
Hit a great shot, made an eagle, Now you're back. You're back in the round. How important is that to kind of have that next shot mentality and just don't give up, right? You know, PAT is obviously different than a regular tournament because you have that target score. But a lot of times you're in a match, you don't know what the next guy is going to do.
Right.
And if you give up after 8, you're giving up.
Right.
You know, so kind of talk a little bit about that mindset of let me hit a good shot. I know I can hit the good shot, and then all of a sudden now you're back to being confident again.
Right. Yeah. At that point, I was frustrated with how I played, and it's always going to be in the back of your mind that you played rough. But like you said, the next shot is just as important. And yeah, I mean, I know I could go out there and look at a golf hole, and I know I could birdie. I know I could maybe potentially on a par 5 make an eagle. And I hit the ball pretty long with the driver. So that's what I was telling myself through the round. I was like, I know I could play golf, and I know I could hit really good shots, and I know I could hit the ball a little bit further than you know, at that time I was focused on my group. I was like, I know I could hit the ball further than these kids. So let me do that, right? Like, why not just do it? Like, I just blasted a couple in the first few holes into the trees. I'm hitting shots that I'm not, you know, necessarily wanting to hit, but let me hit a good drive here, and then let me actually hit a ball from the fairway and see what I could do. I know I'm good enough to make birdie,
Right.
and that was my mindset. I was like, you know, well, I might not par out from here on out. I might not put together as many birdies as I want to, but let me like I said, I salvage that. Let me salvage this round, and I actually salvaged it a little bit better than I thought I was going to. And an 80, you know, if I shot an 80 today, you can ask any of my friends. I'm a little upset, you know, I'm like, don't talk to me for a lot. You know, 80 is 80, especially at some of the golf courses I'm playing. It's a little bit more gettable. So, I want to shoot, you know, mid 70s is a respectable round.
Right.
And I said, okay, I shot an 80. Let's, like I told you earlier, let me shoot that 77. And then, yeah, just next shot, next hole, get through it, you know, and if the good comes, and from that, you know, you have a good hole, do it again. You know, like, you know, you could do it, right?
Yeah.
I know I could hit good shots.
So I think basically the general theme of, you know, kind of what we've talked about is, you know, practice on your short game, practice close to the hole, focus in on targets, simulate the course. That gives you more confidence, show the confidence on. And then once you have that confidence, kind of put the pedal down, and that helps you, you know, kind of keep going through the round.
Right. Yeah, there's no better feeling than hitting a chip to an inch in a big round.
Yeah.
Not even needing your putter, and you kind of smile. You're like, so that's, you know, for a high handicapper, they're like super ecstatic that they did that. But like for somebody like myself, I think I'm like a 3-point something, which is, you know, pretty good. For, you know, if you were talking to anybody, and I do that in a golf round, I kind of smile. I said, and that's why I put the work in, you know, and you move on, you know.
Awesome. Now, as we're wrapping up today, someone wants to get in touch with you, lessons, tips, reach out. What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I think my email is up there, Jake Wheeler Traditions at gmail.com. Shoot me an email. If you're on social media, my Instagram's up there too, Ferrara_golf. I got some videos there just to kind of prove that I could, you know, swing it a little bit. But yeah, reach out to me. I'm grateful enough, actually, this winter, it'd be the first time in my career that I have this ability. But the guys down at Allen Golf Club in New Haven, great. You know, I know I'm the assistant pro at Wheeler Family Traditions, and we're a great golf club. You know, if you haven't played there, come check us out. You'll be happy. A lot of cool holes. But down at Allen, they have a beautiful indoor TrackMan facility now, and they're actually, you know, giving me the opportunity. You know, if it comes around, I don't expect it to be crazy, but a couple lessons in the winter. So if you want to get something going before the spring starts, hit me up on Instagram through an email, and we could set something up inside if that's something you're into. Just hit me up. We'll work something out for sure. And that they're, like I said, they're located. I'm from East Haven. They're located East Haven, New Haven. So if you're in that area, it'd work out nicely.
Awesome. Well, Jake, thanks a bunch for coming on today, and that wraps up another episode of Navigating Your Wealth Journey. Thanks.
Thank you.
The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. This guest and their company are not affiliated with or endorsed by